persons congregating within an environment outside the workplace, making sure that people sanitize their hands and wash their hands. And all these measures that we have put in place, if we were to consistently do them, consistently each element of it, our modeling shows that it would be very similar to a lockdown. But if we continue to have violations of the guideline, then we'll be pushed to review some of these measures and possibly change them. But certainly, I think it's really important that we realize that these measures are not just...
It's almost a microcosm, has everything. People live in them, people reside there. We've only asked that they be shut, because if you look at a university, any typical university, and many people have attended, people come from every part of Nigeria. If you open the University of Abuja today and ask students to return, people will be coming from Jos, people will be coming from Meduguri, Imo, everywhere. And then they'll be bringing whatever they have. But there are institutions within every university that must function the way ministries function regularly. Those may be the ones you're referring to when you allude to an announcement from any vice chancellor or anybody asking regular work to be done in their campuses, not in terms of reopening the schools, but in terms of having work done in the place. And I guess in the case of University of Agriculture of Makurdi, it's a little bit more unique, because whilst the Ministry of Education governs the entire education ecosystem, and indeed we are the visitors to the university, we regard them as specialized universities in the sense that they are more or less working arms of the Ministry of Agric. In which case, when you reopen an economy like this and ask that Agric researchers and people return to work, they might be your first call to actually come back to school. So I want you to look at and disaggregate the entire proposition that we're trying to provide here and see in which light that they made those announcements. And that's why I want you to situate that. Thanks.
Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much. A question was asked in relation to India, and something that was read somewhere inviting by a certain Mr. Horsfall, inviting Nigerians to pay money towards being evacuated. Well, the reality is that yes, there is a Mr. Horsfall who works in the Nigerian High Commission in India, but no, he did not publish anything inviting Nigerians to pay money to him or to an account. And mission to invite Nigerians in those countries to indicate an interest, if they have any, in being evacuated to back home, and informing them that they would have to pay to the airline that is eventually chosen to carry out the evacuation process. So our High Commission in India is in the process of negotiating with a number of airlines, and I would like to also inform those members of the National Assembly who raised the issue that Nigerian Airlines are amongst those that have been invited to quote. So they will select an airline, and Nigerians interested will pay directly to the airline. And Mr. Horsfall at no time indicated, at least to the knowledge of his ambassador or any other person, did not invite people to pay to any account that may belong to him or anybody else. So simply, Nigerians, should not pay to any account. It will always be invariably to an airline. And an exception was made in the case of the flight coming in tomorrow, because that was partly organized with another government. So our High Commission in London outsourced the collection of the monies to be paid to the airline, because they wanted the High Commission itself to be responsible and to pay. So that was an exception. But in all the other cases, people will be asked to pay directly to an account, to the airlines directly. Thank you very much.
Minister of Environment.
Mr. Chairman, members of PTF, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, good afternoon. From the Federal Minister of Environment, I think the first question was directed to the chairman, but it has an environmental element. I think the question was whether we are requiring private businesses to decontaminate before they reopen. Was that the question? I didn't quite catch it. Okay. To pay how much? No, that's not Federal Minister of Environment. No. What we said, okay. Here it is. The Federal Minister of Environment has taken as part of its mandate to decontaminate and disinfect establishment, governmental and non-governmental, and we have done hundreds. What we said, part of our regulations, any private business that wants to decontaminate must hire a licensed environmental health officer, licensed by the agency under our ministry, that is the Environmental Health Officers Registration Council of Nigeria. So it has to be a certified, licensed environmental health officer that will do the decontamination. That's what that is all about. The second question, the role of the environmental health officers in the containment of the COVID-19. Well, advocacy on the general containment, that's adhering to all distancing, all the measures. We go down from the state, actually federal, state level, local government, all the way to the community level to advocate adhering to all these regulations, measures in order to contain the spread of the virus. Also, we counsel people. This is time that there's a lot of anxiety and fear because of this virus. So we also provide some kind of counseling so that you are focused, you know what you are doing, not even in trying to avoid the virus, you go and get yourself contaminated. So there is also that level of counseling. We're also training volunteers at the community level, the environmental health emergency response volunteers. These are what the environmental health officers are doing. As for isolation and treatment centers also, we carry out environmental health surveillance of the isolation centers through our sanitation desk across the country. To this end, we have written and requested from the Federal Ministry of Health a list of isolation centers and treatment centers, which they have provided. We have so the management of the waste storage, all the way to the treatment in the same centers, adequate sanitation and hygiene. These are centers that must be kept neat and clean and safe. So also our environmental sanitation desks officers are provided down to community level, because we have these environmental health officers all the way down to community level. So this is what basically the environmental health officers are doing under the Federal Ministry of Environment. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now take the Secretary to Government and Chairman PTF COVID-19.
Well, I'm sure all the questions have been answered, but I think there's one or two that I'm expected to address. The one that has to deal with the issue of the banning of the motorcycles on the outskirts. if one of the key protocol is social or physical distancing, how do you operate that if you allow the use of motorcycles? It's totally impossible. And that's the reason why we said for those satellite communities, tricycles are allowed, and of the use of motorcycles in most of the states now, except in rural areas. So this is not new. There was a question that had to deal with the financial packages that have been released by the central bank. Well, I think we've spoken about this here, but for the purposes of infrastructure, like I said, there are two packages. The first 100 billion is designed to deal with major hospitals and pharmaceutical companies. The essence is that after COVID, or even in the processes of COVID, we will be able to build our health infrastructure. That's why that money is made available for our major manufacturing companies to begin to explore the possibility of manufacturing drugs sufficient to deal with COVID-19 and other health-related matters. The second component, that's the 50 billion, is the one that is designed for SMEs. Even within the context of those SMEs, there is a package that is designed for households. And within the households, they have the mini, they have the micro, and they have the micro plus. The mini, the amount that you assess under the mini scheme is 500,000 for households that can show evidence that their businesses were impacted by COVID-19. For the for the micro, it's from 500,000 to 1.5 million. Part of the eligibility is justification or showing proof of the fact that your businesses have been affected by the COVID-19. And for the micro plus, it's 1.5 to 3 million. But under the SMEs, the maximum you can access is 25 million. So that is entirely designed to deal with the lower level of our business and enterprises that they can access. And the conditions, and they are not difficult. Also that of the mini is a valid identification and a guarantor. And some few other conditions, because the essence is that we know we are operating in very difficult times, and when you begin to put very difficult conditions, then the essence of the package will be defeated. The essence of the package is to provide a lifeline for our people who have been adversely affected by COVID-19. So I believe my advice is that we should access the website of the central bank or visit any of the national microfinance banks, because it's coordinated by National Microfinance Bank, which is also an agency of the central bank. You will be able to get all the information that is required for the purposes of your access to the loan facilities. I think that's invariably all the questions that I have left for me. But to continue to appeal to us, particularly members of the fourth realm, that's the media, that the time to drive down, to drill down the message and the protocols and the guidelines that are issued by the federal government through the task force is now. Truly, I will continue to emphasize that the only way we can be able to tackle this dreaded monster is when the citizens and government and its institutions come together to work on the basis of understanding, on the basis of support and cooperation, and in every circumstance those of us that are in different levels of leadership should take the opportunity to drill home this message. I will not end without saying that it is our war. Like I said in my remarks, every Nigerian is a combatant in this war. There are no idle soldiers, because what you do with yourself has the chances of affecting your neighbor, your loved ones, and the members of your community. So everyone is a combatant in this particular battle. If we operate under that feeling and with a sense of responsibility, I am very confident that we will overcome this battle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman PTF COVID-19.